Hello everyone and welcome to History How-Tos, a guide of how-tos for history teachers. My name's Rosie Corkin-Smith and today I'm here to talk to you about how to use Oracy in the classroom. So as always, here is the how-to sheet, which you can download from the History How-Tos website. Please do download it and read through it. It's going to cover everything that I'll talk about today. Feel free to share it with colleagues as well. Oracy is definitely something that should be embedded whole school and is most effective when consistently used across the curriculum, so students kind of can make connections and why they're talking about something or talking about a problem, an extended problem in maths, and also why they're discussing an argument within history. So please do make use of that. So first of all, simply, what is Oracy? The term Oracy was first actually only coined in the 1960s by Andrew Wilkinson, but most simply it's defined as the ability to express yourself fluently and grammatically in speech. And this kind of became a bit of a focus in education around this time, but kind of more significantly a couple of years ago has been pushed through the amazing work of Voice 21. So what does the research say about Oracy? Voice 21 are kind of the people who have pioneered the development of Oracy within the classroom. And if you have a look on their website, there is an amazing amount of research, ideas, strategies, workshops, CPD courses that you can use to help successfully embed Oracy within your classroom or perhaps within your school. But what do they say? They basically say that high quality Oracy education, not just using Oracy, but teaching Oracy, teaching students how to talk effectively, allows them to learn through talk, but also to talk. So not only does the talking and the explicit teaching of talking allow them to develop and consolidate their knowledge, their learning, moving it from their working memory to their long-term memory, but it teaches them how to talk properly. It teaches them the correct vocabulary to use, the correct structures, pronunciation. And this is when they develop and deepen their knowledge. But it's really important here that we kind of remember that this has got to be, specifically and explicitly taught. It's got to be planned. It's got to be modelled and scaffolded, not just kind of added on as a bolt-on, which is what I'll talk about a little bit later on. The reason why I kind of became so aware of Oracy is kind of the first point I make at the bottom here about the fact that the variety and breadth of language used in children's homes varies by socioeconomic status. Now, our school context is that we have a very high number of pupil premium students. We're from quite a deprived area, and therefore children that leave school with poor communication, verbal communication skills, are less likely to find employment, and they're less likely to have a better understanding or even a good understanding of words or phrases than those that are from better, more affluent areas. So it's really important that we teach talk, we teach Oracy for the sake of social equality. And obviously, of course, as educators, our main aim is to help and educate students for academic success. And academic success has huge opens many doors, especially for their futures, for what they want to do when they leave school, but also it has a huge impact on well-being as well. Talk is essential for learning and thinking, and when students know how to think critically, verbally reason with one another. Robin Alexander has conducted over 20 international studies that prove that using Oracy and embedding Oracy within the classroom has an impact on academic outcomes. Again, I mentioned the website on the Voice 21 website, but they kind of utilise this Oracy framework and say that the explicit teaching supports children to make significant progress in these 4 areas. So physical skills, so that might be how they literally pace their speaking. It might be the tonal variation. So, we've all seen students stand up and try and do a presentation and read kind of in quite a monotone voice from a cue card. Might be body language, it might be gesticulating. The second one is obviously linguistic, so the building of vocabulary, using appropriate vocabulary, the register. Cognitive, obviously this is kind of the most significant one. This is where we kind of focus on learning, the choice of content that they might want to convey, kind of appropriate use of knowledge, clarification of materials. And this kind of part of Oracy here is specifically useful in the history classroom, and the kind of cognitive development that Oracy has on students through teaching talk really kind of shows itself in their written work after. And the way in which we embedded it in my school context, giving them the opportunity to, and the time to talk, it really had a significant impact in their written ability, which obviously for exam classes in particular, they need to be able to write logically, they need to be able to sequence, they need to be able to use appropriate knowledge, they need to be able to, clarify and consolidate key bits of information. So this is really crucial here. And obviously, as with anything, it has, huge social and emotional advantages. So active listening is a huge skill that we want our students to develop. Liveliness, managing interactions, and the appropriateness of when to contribute and when to challenge, and so on and so forth. So please do check out that website. It's absolutely fantastic. So how do you use Oracy in the classroom? This is quite vague, and I've included this because these strategies were used as part of a whole school approach to Oracy, not history specific, but I will obviously go and show some history specific ideas in the next couple of slides. So the first way you can use Oracy in the classroom is for learning and thinking. So 2 ideas that I've kind of explored here. The first is dialogic discussion. So teaching students to explore historical ideas, arguments through scaffolding discussion. And the best way I found to do this is by providing talking frames. So similar to that you would use as a writing frame to kind of scaffold and support for maybe those lower ability pupils, but providing talking frames or specific group roles. And this kind of almost forces students to encounter and engage with new vocabulary and processes. So you might want to include, in your talking frame, structural kind of phrases. You might want to use content specific kind of phrases, but forcing them to use them and experiment with them and get them to verbally kind of understand them in a low risk way with their peers or within a group, increases their confidence with them, and eventually you'll see them used in their writing. A more kind of specific strategy here was talk out. Talk out was a strategy that we embedded whole school, and it was really successful. But giving them the opportunity to talk out maybe a plan for a question, an exam question, a presentation, it gives them the opportunity to pick out inaccuracies and structural issues, and also to develop their arguments. Somebody else might say, oh, well, that's really interesting, you thought about that, but could we have also considered that? And then finally is using Oracy for accuracy and fluency. And one strategy we used really successfully was say it again. It's super simple. You can use every day in questioning, in assessment, in live modelling. It also moves us away from, the traditional shackles of response evaluation, where you ask a student a question and then immediately demand an answer. But you might ask a student to, answer a question, they do, and you want to say, well, can you say that again, but can you use a piece of evidence to support your answer? Or can you say that again, but can you remove the words like, in it, the standard year 11 dictionary that kind of pop into discussions when it gets specifically heated. But say it again is a really good idea, and it kind of it shows students that you're not going to tolerate the use of slang within the classroom, and that you uphold the use of proper standard English. And I think that's really, really important with Oracy, is that you model yourself and you have high expectations of them. So they're kind of 3 kind of key ways in which Oracy works really, really well. Again, you could use groupings within the use of Oracy. So you might work within trios or pairs. You could use a little nest where students kind of whisper answers to themselves, or sometimes I get them to, if they've got a phone, to take out their phone and to film themselves rehearsing something, then they can watch it back. There's lots, again, ideas on Voice 21. Or another thing is using roles. So you might have an instigator, someone that starts the conversation, a clarifier, somebody sums up people's arguments and clarifies what people have said, a challenger who says, well, yes, I like what you said there, but could we consider this? And I'll show you an example of that specifically in just a moment. But as always, with the how-tos, we've kind of got a clear do's and don'ts. So I've already mentioned modelling excellent standards of Oracy. Don't allow for slang to creep in. Hold students to account for the use of poor Oracy. This is where Say It Again comes in really, really useful. Create a culture that promotes excellent Oracy. Maybe you want a display, you want to talk about it. And the most important thing, the last bullet point here, is you need to explicitly teach students to talk. This is not a quick win. This is not, let's do, an activity that's an Oracy-based activity. It has to be embedded in with every class, with, every lesson. There should be, a specific type of talk being taught. And that's a tongue twister for you. So I mentioned that don't include it as a quick win. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It's something that does need to be taught to students. It needs to be revisited and repeated and practice. Practice for deliberate practice, but practice for the fluency of it as well. Don't rush. It does take time. And as well, don't confuse Oracy with speaking and listening. Speaking and listening is just one element of Oracy. So, a couple of ideas for the history classroom. I've kind of mentioned these already. So verbal planning things, having talking frames, in questioning feedback. But a couple of ways in that it's worked specifically for me. Here is an example from a lesson on the Elizabethan Poor Law, where they had to talk out the success of the Poor Law. And what I asked them to do is they'd built up the knowledge already. I differentiated 4 roles with our cooperative learning groups, and they had to use the talk stems to build their conversation about this question before they even attempted to write an answer to it. This was a really successful day. This was actually a whole school day, but this is obviously a history specific task. Was a no pens day, Wednesday, which obviously rolls off the tongue great. But this was a really great day in which the whole school for the whole day did not do any writing, and all outcomes were explored through talk or movement. And here we had a heads and tails activity where they needed to they had an individual or an event, and somebody else in the classroom had a description which matched to that person or event. They needed to find their matching cards by talking to each other and asking questions. And then once they'd done that, they then had to arrange themselves in chronological order around the room. So again, completely, communication heavy and communication focused. And then a verbal essay plan. This was actually used as a model to scaffold discussion. Obviously, it was an issue about the labelling of children's clothes, something that was quite well covered in the news, so there was a lot of discussion around school about it, and we kind of used this structure: speculate, build, decide, reflect, about this issue, which we then applied to the history content for the latter part of the consolidation task. So I realised that was a very quick and whirlwind introduction to Oracy, but if it's something that interests you and something that you think would be beneficial in your classrooms, in your schools, then please do get in touch with me. My Twitter handle is up at the top there, but there's loads of amazing resources that are, I will have not done any justice to the explanation of Oracy that you can explore here. So we have Voice 21, their website's amazing. The Education Endowment Foundation did a really interesting review into the use of oral language interventions in the classroom, and you can see there was an impact of a 5-month progress over the course of a year. So it is definitely, worth doing, and it has a huge impact. And then underpinning the framework behind that intervention by the EEF was the research by Robin Alexander. And I'd like to thank you for watching this short video. Anything that you might need, please check out the history how-tos, look on the site, download the worksheets, share them, use hashtag on Twitter, subscribe to the channel, and if you have any questions, please do get involved, get in touch, and